Hi, everyone. My name's Donna with Bookkeeping Made Simple. And today I want to talk about communication. And in fact, it's very relevant that that was the topic that I had already chosen for today, because one of my bookkeepers just reached out and said they couldn't reach a client and hasn't been able to reach him for weeks. So that really puts a kink in our ability to provide the services that he's paying for. Before I get into that, though, as always, if you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe. These videos are also available as podcasts on Spotify, Google, and Amazon so far. We're working to get more channels put up. And with that, I'm going to dive right in. So there's two sides to communication. And the first side is making sure that, well, it's the most important skill you can have in business by far. Business owners are frustrated, myself included, that so many, especially potential employees, have such poor communication skills. We have all this social media, we're communicating all the time, but I've noticed that there's a lot of miscommunication that goes on. So there's an art to it, both from the method you use, whether it's video, email, in person, chat, text. We have a lot of channels that are available to us today. And how you actually express yourself. It is two-way. So the message must be received and understood on both sides of the fence. Now, in the major professions, the big three, which are medicine, law, and accounting, we have a lot of jargon we use, and I think every trade and profession has their own jargon. These major professions really, really have a lot of jargon that can be misinterpreted, misunderstood. You have to really understand what those words mean. In medicine, they use very precise speech. So where I would say nose, they have a fancy word for it, specifically the septum, between your nostrils, They're very, very, very precise. They have to go through classes on, half of learning anatomy is to learn the right vocabulary for each part of the body, so that when you're talking to another doctor, you both understand what is being said. Okay, so like I said, if I say nose, I might mean the end of my nose. The doctor might mean the septum between my nostrils. Another person might mean that, and there are words for all of this, right? They need to be very precise in their speech, or something goes badly wrong. In law, my friend Dana Ball, who is with Avanta Business Law. She's amazing, by the way. She's one of my favorites. My other favorite is Raffon Designé Legal Services for business law. But she said, I recently read a post from Dana that said that attorneys used to be paid by the word. So if you've ever wondered why those contracts do not have plain speech in them, it is because attorneys were paid by the word, and they would use $10 words and make it as long and complicated as possible, so that one, if it's complicated, you get more law to practice because you get to go to court, and two, again, when your financial future depends on how many words you use, you tend to use a lot of words. So it explains the legal code. It explains these confusing contracts that we've all read, that I'm left kind of going, does that mean what I think it means, or does it mean something else entirely? Also in accounting, we have jargon that relates to very specific things. Speaking to another accountant, I can usually get that dialed in pretty quickly. Speaking with a person that is not well grounded in accounting, such as a client, it can get lost in translation. So our first order of business is to make sure that we understand what we're saying, and we are communicating that to the client in such a way that they understand what we're saying. I've had clients reach out and you know, try to say things that didn't parse well to me. And I've really had to dial in, but I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So our first order of business is to make sure we understand what the client is saying to us and that the client understands clearly what we're referring to. That can be it can be challenging. If that doesn't happen though, the client gets frustrated because they're not getting their needs met. They think they've communicated their needs clearly. We think we've understood what they need and we're doing what we said we would do. But for some reason, we're frustrated because we can't seem to make the client happy. And that's frustrating on both sides. Let me assure you, my job is not to make my clients frustrated. It is to help them. It is to make them, you know, to fulfill their needs. So we need to understand what they want done first. They need to understand what we are going to do. And we want to make sure that everybody involved understands what the project is, the scope of the project, exactly what we're going to do, what we're not going to do, and what these words mean. I have an amazing staff. I'm going to put that right out there. I have an amazing staff. I hired them because they were amazing. And they want to make our clients happy. That's their job. We also want to make sure we understand what the other person is saying to us. Stephen Covey, in his book, 7 Habits of Effective People, said, you know, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So our first order of business as service providers, regardless of the service, is to make sure that we are understanding what the client is saying to us. And that can be quite challenging. Anyone that's worked customer services know how challenging that can be. This, by way of example, okay, I just recently had a discussion with my husband, and we were talking past each other. We were actually agreeing. We were getting into an argument. And then we both kind of stopped and said, we're saying the same thing, but we're using different words, and neither one of us was stopping to listen to the other person. Once we did that, there was no argument. We were in agreement. But there's a lot of times I think people get heated and they get, you know, whether that's from anger or excitement or fear or any other emotion, it's not always anger. They get heated and they stop listening, and it happens on both sides. So in our case, he was saying something that I was actually agreeing to, and we were both excited, and I finally stopped and said, I think we're having 2 separate conversations. And either that or we're in complete agreement, but we're expressing it differently. And we're literally, I mean, he was talking about one thing and I was like, no, that's not what I said. Which actually happens quite a bit because we're both in finance and we are very interested in what's going on in the financial world. And so we get really excited, and then I'll start talking and he'll get excited and he'll start talking back, and there's no understanding till we stop and pause and make sure that everything's, you know, that stop and listen and understand what the other person is saying. That's really what that comes down to. In conversation, I find, especially if I have especially with a client, it's really important to restate what they just said. So, you know, if I have a new client and they're saying some of the things that people have said to me, you know, my last accountant was terrible. Really? How were they terrible? Well, they, you know, I never got a call back. And okay. So what I'm hearing you say is that you were frustrated with your last accountant because they weren't communicating effectively with you. Yes. Okay. Then we can work with that. That's actually a conversation I did have not too long ago. So I do that, that's a very effective tool to make sure that we are understanding what they're trying to say. I am as bad as anybody else about getting excited and talking and having to backtrack and restate that again in a way that makes sense. Also, what's the underlying message you're trying to put out? I've been in conversations with people that I swear what they were trying to convey is how smart they are. Not, I have something useful and relevant to say, but look how smart I am. It's really common, and it's annoying because the more education someone has, the more likely they are to do that. They will use $20 words when a simple one will do. And they will talk past you. They don't stop to listen. There's just so much that happens. But what I want to talk to people who have a thoughtful, relevant contribution to the conversation. And too many people have intentions, they're subconsciously, myself included, by the way, really trying to say, look how smart I am. Look how great I am. Instead of, again, going back to the servant attitude of how can I help you? What can I do to assist you? What can we do to help your business grow? Also, consider who you're talking to. My ex-husband is a wonderful man. We are still friends today. His native language is not English, it is Spanish. He came to the United States and basically taught himself English. Because he is self-taught in English, he does not always and because English is not his native language, he does not always understand nuance. And he doesn't always understand, English is a huge language. We have like 1 million words in it. But he will come across words, or I will use a word sometimes that he just doesn't know. So when I talk to him, the first thing I want to remember is this man is smart enough to have taught himself English. He's not stupid. He's a very, very smart man. Our children together are brilliant. So I certainly don't want to condescend to him. I want to make sure that I'm using basically the same words I would use to someone else, because if he doesn't understand it, he will then learn it, and he'll be able to, he'll understand it the next time. Since he's a non-native speaker, he will get words in the wrong order. And so because he's a non-native English speaker, I often have to go back and restate what I just said. But I don't want to do it in a way that's going to make him feel like I think he's dumb, because he's not by any means. By the way, my Spanish sucks. I speak Spanish and German, and I speak them both very badly. I can get by with a phrase book. I can go shopping, and I know how to ask, how do you say this? And I can order in a restaurant and ask for the bathroom. That's the limit of both Spanish and German. But, a really good way to communicate with someone is to start off thinking that they are intelligent. You don't ever want to talk down to someone, but be prepared to restate your message so that there's clarity behind it. We want to make sure that we have the right channel. Nobody uses the phone anymore, which is interesting to me. Side note, if you're a Gen Xer like me, you remember having your ear glued to the phone. I don't like to talk on the phone anymore. I would just as soon either have a video chat where I can see their faces, or just text. And most people are like that today. However, and a lot of people just want email. A lot of people just want text. Well, the catch is, let me start with this. A lot of people also only check their emails, myself included, a couple times a day. I don't have my email client open all day, every day. I can't, because then I am so bogged down in responding to emails or forwarding them to staff that I'm not getting any of my work done. So I check my email 2 or 3 times a day, and the rest of the time, I don't even have notifications that pop up. So if it's urgent and important, a phone call is a better channel for communication. Why? Because you're going to get someone on the other end of the line, and you're going to be able to resolve that much faster than if you're sending emails. Text and email is great, but if it's urgent, a phone call just gets through faster. We use email extensively. It's because it's very difficult. We can't send these reports and properly respond to messages through text very well. Also, a limitation of texting is that when you text a business, well, let me back up. I want to talk about email for a minute. Email is for longer communication and reports, things that have to be attached, that do not require an immediate turnaround. Like I said, I only check email 2 or 3 times a day. Usually it's first thing in the morning to see if anything came in overnight that's urgent, that has to be handled right away. Right after I come back from lunch, in case anything came in, it's really urgent, and before I leave for the day. So at 5 o'clock, anything that's sent after 5, I don't look at. I generally tell people, allow a full business day for us to respond to your email. And that is, especially if it's coming to me. And that is because I have meetings, I have phone calls, I have videos to make, I have times when everything has to be turned off, and sometimes that can last all day. So if you'll give me 24, a full business day to respond, somewhere I'm going to pick it up on those 3 times, and I'll get it taken care of. But if it's important, if it's urgent and you need an immediate response, email is just not the best way to do it. If a response is required to an email, it's better to, in my opinion, okay, so etiquette experts may differ, but I have found that if you put response required in the subject line of your email, it's irritating. It comes across as being demanding, aggressive, and both putting response required or saying, please respond so I know you got it, it comes across as condescending as well. Email kind of has a self-correcting thing. If you've got the email address wrong, it'll bounce. You'll know instantly. You'll get an email back saying, oh, we can't find that email address in our system. And if it is correct, especially if you've emailed us before, assume that it got to the proper email address. You can't really control what the other person does with that email once it's been received. But I find that the best way to make sure that there's a response to your email is to ask a question. Yeah, I just wanted to double check the turnaround on this. Were we clear it was going to take 2 weeks or 3? That's not aggressive. It's simply asking the question, and because it's a question, it does require a response. Great way to get a response without without being overly aggressive about it. Now, personally, if someone sends me an email, it's just for information purposes, I typically won't respond to it. I'll just deal with it, because I am rather limited in my time. If the information is sensitive, a phone call would have been more appropriate. So, and then I'm going to get into texting. I'm not a fan of texting businesses. One, there are most businesses that I know are actually still using landlines or VoIP phones. Many of them aren't taking texts. So one, verify that they can receive a text. Two, verify that you're texting the right person. And one of my kind of pet peeves is that everybody will text me personally when it should have gone to their bookkeeper. And so I'm left going, copy, paste, send to the right person. Hey, I got this from so-and-so. It's difficult to forward emails and get it to the person that actually can handle the request. And again, companies often don't have efficient text support. Text support, not tech, text. So be mindful of the limitations on text messaging. We like to have everything in email a lot because that way we have it in writing. It automatically goes into our CRM. We can keep track of what's happened. And so far we don't have the support for that. Make sure you're communicating with the right person. Who is the proper person to have this conversation with? Now, I might tag Elon Musk on Twitter, but I would be very surprised if he actually responded to my tweet. Because he's a busy man. I know he's busy. He's insanely busy. Yes, he has time to buy Twitter and tweet on it, but he's, I just don't expect that. And speaking of Twitter, don't share anything in a public forum that should be kept private. My personal credo, especially with my employees, is praise in public. If I'm praising someone, or if I get praise about one of my bookkeepers, I publish it everywhere. I want them to know. I want the world to know. These are my fantastic staff members. They do a fantastic job. Look at what their other clients have said. But I never, ever, ever correct someone in public, at least not intentionally, because it's humiliating, it's embarrassing, and it's rude, and it's emotionally a difficult thing. So I try to make sure that's all private, but I have seen a lot of people use Twitter and Facebook and other social medias to vent, which I don't like. If someone's venting on their social media page, I'm probably not going to follow them, at least not for long, because I have so much to deal with as it is, like so many of us, we've had a rough couple of years. I just can't deal with the venting and the negativity and the nastiness, and I don't believe that belongs in the public square. I think that should be more uplifting. I think the public square should be, yes, certainly talk about your criticisms, but don't just criticize. What can you do to help? What can I do to change things? And I don't mean canceling people. I don't like that either. And my intention is never to treat others or communicate with others in a way that I would not want to be treated. That is it for today. Hope I've communicated this well. I will look forward to talking with you again soon.